The wind cuts across your face like thousands of tiny blades. You stand on a frozen plain somewhere in Eurasia, roughly 20,000 years ago. Snow crunches beneath your feet. The air is so cold it burns your lungs with every breath. Around you, there are no cities, no roads, no warm houses waiting beyond the horizon. Only endless ice, scattered patches of hardy grass, and the distant silhouettes of mammoths moving through the pale morning mist. The silence feels almost alive. Somewhere nearby, wolves are watching. Tonight, survival is not guaranteed, and tomorrow is even less certain. Yet against every expectation, your ancestors did not simply endure this world, they flourished in it. Most people imagine the Ice Age as a time when humans survived only because they discovered fire. But some researchers suggest that fire was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. The real advantage may have been something far less obvious, an extraordinary ability to adapt socially, share knowledge, and transform hostile environments into places where life could continue. But here is the fascinating part. When we hear the words Ice Age, many of us picture the entire Earth buried beneath endless snow. It is an image reinforced by movies, illustrations, and popular culture. In reality, the world was far more complicated. During the last glacial maximum, around 20,000 years ago, enormous ice sheets covered much of northern North America and large parts of northern Europe. Some of these glaciers stretched for thousands of kilometers and reached thicknesses measured in kilometers rather than meters. Sea levels were also dramatically lower than they are today because so much of Earth's water remained locked inside continental ice. Yet not every landscape looked like Antarctica. Many regions beyond the great ice sheets remained surprisingly open. Vast grasslands, often called the Mammoth Steppe by archaeologists and paleontologists, extended across large parts of Eurasia. These cold, dry plains supported remarkable populations of grazing animals, including mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, bison, horses, reindeer, and musk oxen. To modernize, such an environment still appears incredibly harsh. To Ice Age humans, however, it also represented opportunity. Where enormous herds gathered, food could sometimes be found. Where animals migrated, people could follow. This changes the way we think about survival. Ancient humans were not simply trapped inside frozen wastelands waiting for warmer weather. They were active participants in constantly changing ecosystems. Archaeological discoveries from sites across Europe and Asia suggest that human groups repeatedly adjusted their movements as climates shifted. Instead of remaining in one location throughout the year, many communities likely followed seasonal patterns, moving between different camps depending on available resources. This flexibility may have become one of humanity's greatest strengths. Unlike many large Ice Age mammals whose survival depended upon specific habitats, humans could alter their behavior much faster than evolution alone could reshape their bodies. When forests expanded, they adapted. When grasslands returned, they adapted again. When temperatures suddenly dropped, they found new strategies rather than waiting thousands of generations for biological change. In many ways, culture began solving problems faster than evolution ever could. That may have been humanity's greatest invention long before writing, farming, or cities ever appeared. But surviving freezing temperatures required much more than simply following animals across the landscape. A far greater challenge still waited every single night. But there is another question that is even more surprising. If fire was available, why didn't every human population survive equally well? Evidence suggests that controlled use of fire existed long before the coldest phases of the last Ice Age. Archaeological sites indicate that various human species had been using fire for hundreds of thousands of years, although researchers continue to debate exactly when regular firemaking became widespread. By the time modern humans spread across Eurasia, fire was already an established technology. So clearly, fire alone cannot explain everything. A campfire provides warmth. It allows food to be cooked. It offers light after sunset. It can discourage many predators from approaching too closely. These advantages were undeniably important. But fire also creates new problems. It needs fuel. Fuel is not equally available everywhere. Above the Arctic tree line or across windswept steppe landscapes, large pieces of dry wood could be difficult to obtain, especially during long winters. Some archaeological evidence suggests that people may sometimes have supplemented wood with other combustible materials available in their surroundings, though the exact practices likely differed from region to region. Keeping a fire alive through freezing nights may itself have required constant effort. Someone had to gather fuel. Someone had to protect the flames. Someone had to restart them if they failed. In other words, a fire was never just a tool. It was a responsibility shared by the entire group. Even more importantly, warmth from a fire extends only a limited distance. The moment someone stepped away into darkness, the cold immediately returned. This forced Ice Age people to solve an entirely different problem. How do you stay warm when the fire cannot follow you? The answer did not come from flames. It came from something they wore, something they built, and something they learned to create with astonishing skill. And that may reveal an even greater secret behind humanity's survival. But here is where the story becomes even more remarkable. If you were suddenly transported into the Ice Age wearing modern jeans and a cotton jacket, you probably would not survive for long. Cotton absorbs moisture, loses much of its insulating ability when wet, and offers little protection against relentless freezing winds. Your ancestors understood this problem without knowing a single scientific equation. They learned it through experience. Archaeological discoveries suggest that by the Upper Paleolithic, modern humans had become exceptionally skilled at processing animal hides. Stone scrapers found at numerous Ice Age sites across Europe and Asia often bear microscopic wear patterns consistent with scraping flesh and fat from skins before they were softened and prepared for clothing. Some sites have also yielded bone needles with carefully drilled eyes, dating back tens of thousands of years. These are surprisingly sophisticated tools. A needle is more than a sharpened piece of bone. It allows separate pieces of hide to be stitched together into garments that fit closely around the body. A loose animal skin draped over the shoulders may block some wind, but a tailored outfit traps pockets of warm air, dramatically improving insulation. Some researchers believe this technological leap helped modern humans expand into colder regions that would otherwise have been extremely difficult to occupy year-round. The evidence does not tell us exactly what every garment looked like. Organic materials such as leather, fur, and thread rarely survive for tens of thousands of years. Instead, archaeologists reconstruct these possibilities using tools, microscopic analysis, experimental archaeology, and comparisons with later Arctic cultures. The picture that emerges is surprisingly advanced. Clothing was probably layered. Different animal furs likely served different purposes. Large hides could protect against wind. Softer furs may have insulated the body. Foot coverings were especially important because frostbite could quickly become life-threatening in freezing environments. Yet clothing alone solved only part of the challenge. Cold does not disappear simply because your body is covered. Eventually, every traveler must stop. Every family must sleep. Every child must rest. Which raises another mystery. Where did they spend the night? But there is another misconception worth exploring. Many people imagine Ice Age humans living almost entirely inside caves. Caves certainly played an important role. Sites such as those in France, Spain, and other parts of Europe preserve remarkable evidence of repeated human occupation. Their stable temperatures offered protection from wind, snow, and seasonal extremes. But caves were never available everywhere. Much of the Mammoth steppe stretched across enormous open landscapes with few natural shelters. People had to build their own. Archaeological discoveries from parts of Eastern Europe have revealed circular structures constructed using the bones of large Ice Age mammals, particularly mammoths. These remarkable sites have fascinated researchers for decades. While archaeologists continue to debate exactly how every structure was used, many appear to have served as durable living spaces or seasonal camps. Imagine the amount of cooperation required. Large bones had to be transported. They had to be arranged into stable frameworks. Animal hides may have been stretched across portions of these structures to reduce wind exposure, although the exact designs remain uncertain because organic coverings rarely survive. These were not random piles of bones. They were carefully organized spaces. Inside many Ice Age camps, archaeologists have uncovered hearths, stone tools, butchered animal remains, and evidence suggesting repeated occupation over time. Some camps appear to have been revisited season after season. Others were temporary stops following migrating herds. The landscape itself became part of human memory. People learned where rivers froze safely. They remembered migration routes. They recognized which valleys provided protection from winter winds. Knowledge accumulated across generations. Every successful camp became a lesson for the next. This may explain something extraordinary about our species. Unlike claws or thick fur, knowledge becomes stronger every time it is shared. A child who learns from parents begins life with thousands of years of inherited experience rather than starting from nothing. In that sense, every Ice Age shelter represented more than protection from snow. It represented stored information, a physical expression of memory. But surviving winter required far more than staying warm. Even the best shelter becomes useless when food disappears. And that challenge pushed human cooperation to an entirely new level. But here is the question that changes everything. How do you feed an entire community in a world where every missed opportunity could mean starvation? Popular culture often imagines Ice Age hunters as fearless individuals charging toward mammoths with wooden spears. It is an exciting image. But archaeology paints a far more complex picture. Large animals certainly became important food sources in many Ice Age regions. Excavations across Europe and northern Asia have uncovered sites containing mammoth, reindeer, horse, bison, and other Ice Age mammals associated with stone tools and butchering marks. These discoveries leave little doubt that humans regularly processed large animals. What remains less certain is exactly how every hunt unfolded. Some researchers propose carefully coordinated drives that encouraged herds toward natural bottlenecks or difficult terrain. Others suggest that people often focused on vulnerable individuals rather than confronting healthy adults directly. Whatever the exact strategy, one fact seems difficult to ignore. No single person could have accomplished it alone. Large prey meant enormous rewards, but it also demanded planning, communication, and trust. Someone had to observe the animals. Someone had to remember their seasonal routes. Others prepared tools, watched children, maintained camps, or processed meat after the hunt. Success depended on many different skills working together. This may be one of the greatest misunderstandings about prehistoric survival. The strongest individual was not necessarily the most valuable member of the group. An experienced tracker who recognized subtle footprints. An elder who remembered migration patterns from decades earlier. Someone skilled at repairing clothing. Someone capable of making reliable stone blades. Each person contributed knowledge that increased everyone else's chance of surviving another winter. Even food itself became a social resource. At several archaeological sites, the amount of meat represented by butchered animals appears greater than a single individual or small family could consume immediately. While exact social practices remain impossible to reconstruct with certainty, many archaeologists believe that food sharing likely played an important role within Ice Age communities. Sharing reduced risk. Today you return with food. Tomorrow, someone else does. Over time, this creates something more powerful than individual success. It creates resilience. That resilience may have become humanity's greatest survival tool. Yet food created another challenge, almost as dangerous as hunger itself. Fresh meat does not last forever, especially when spring eventually arrives. So how did ancient humans avoid wasting the precious resources they had worked so hard to obtain? But there is another surprising clue hidden beneath the ice. For decades, many people assumed that human survival during the Ice Age was simply a contest of physical toughness. The evidence increasingly suggests otherwise. Compared with many Ice Age animals, humans lacked obvious biological advantages. We had no thick fur, no enormous claws, no powerful jaws, no ability to outrun horses or overpower mammoths. By almost every physical measure, we looked poorly equipped for one of the harshest climates our species had ever faced. So why did we survive while so many giants disappeared? Part of the answer may lie inside the human brain. Archaeological discoveries reveal an extraordinary diversity of stone tools during the Upper Paleolithic. Rather than relying upon a single universal design, different communities developed specialized blades, points, scrapers, burins, and other implements adapted to local conditions. Technology became increasingly flexible. When one solution no longer worked, another could be invented. This ability separated cultural evolution from biological evolution. A mammoth could not suddenly redesign its body after one difficult winter. Humans could redesign their tools before the next one arrived. Knowledge spread surprisingly far as well. Archaeologists have identified materials transported over considerable distances at some prehistoric sites. Stone suitable for making tools sometimes originated far from where it was eventually used. Marine shells have also been discovered far inland, suggesting long-distance exchange or movement across wide landscapes. These discoveries hint at something remarkable. Ice Age communities may not have been isolated islands struggling completely alone. Instead, at least some groups appear to have maintained connections stretching across surprisingly large regions. Ideas traveled, materials traveled, perhaps stories traveled too. Imagine discovering a new way to shape a spear point, or a better method for sewing warm clothing, and watching that knowledge slowly spread from one community to another over generations. Every successful innovation increased the odds that someone, somewhere, would survive. In many ways, humanity's greatest invention was not a tool. It was collective learning. Every generation inherited solutions created by countless generations before them. That invisible library became more valuable than any single weapon or shelter. And perhaps that explains one of the greatest mysteries of all. When the Ice Age finally began to loosen its grip, humans were already prepared to reshape an entirely new world. But there is one part of the Ice Age story that is often left out. When we celebrate humanity's survival, it is easy to imagine a steady march of progress, as if every winter conquered brought us one step closer to civilization. Reality was almost certainly far more complicated. The archaeological record reminds us that survival did not belong to everyone. Entire communities may have disappeared without leaving enough evidence for us to ever know their names. Some camps were abandoned forever. Some migration routes were lost as climates shifted. Countless individual stories vanished long before writing existed to preserve them. Every successful group may have represented many others that were less fortunate. And there is another uncomfortable possibility. As modern humans spread across Eurasia, they encountered other human species, including Neanderthals. For thousands of years, these groups shared parts of the same continent. Fossils and genetic evidence indicate that they occasionally interbred, meaning their relationship was more complex than simple conflict. Yet today, only one human species remains. Exactly why Neanderthals disappeared continues to be debated. Researchers have proposed many contributing factors, including changing climates, small population sizes, competition for resources, disease, genetic isolation, and gradual absorption into expanding populations of Homo sapiens. No single explanation has achieved universal agreement. That uncertainty matters. History is rarely the story of one dramatic event. More often, it is the accumulation of countless small changes unfolding across centuries. The Ice Age teaches the same lesson. It was not simply a battle between humans and nature. It was also a test of cooperation. Groups that exchanged knowledge may have recovered more quickly after difficult seasons. Communities capable of caring for injured members may have preserved valuable experience that otherwise would have been lost. Children growing up in stable social networks inherited more than food and shelter. They inherited memory. In many prehistoric sites, archaeologists have found individuals who appear to have lived for years despite injuries or physical conditions that would have made independent survival difficult. While each case is unique and interpretations remain cautious, many researchers see these discoveries as evidence that at least some Ice Age communities cared for vulnerable members. That idea changes everything. Compassion may not have been a luxury that appeared after civilization. It may have been one of the reasons civilization eventually became possible. Even today, our greatest challenges rarely reward the strongest individual alone. They reward groups capable of learning, adapting, and trusting one another when certainty disappears. Perhaps the Ice Age never truly ended. The glaciers retreated. The temperatures rose. But every generation still faces its own version of an unpredictable world. The question has simply changed. Not can we survive, but how will we choose to survive together? Think back to where we began. You are still standing on that frozen plain. The wind still howls across the snow. Somewhere beyond the mist, mammoths continue their endless migration, while unseen wolves wait patiently in the darkness. At first glance, this world seems determined to erase every trace of humanity. And yet, thousands of years later, the greatest monument those ancient people left behind was not carved in stone. It was us. Not because they were the strongest creatures to walk the Ice Age, but because they discovered something even more powerful. In a world ruled by ice, survival belonged not to those who feared change, but to those who learned